So I'll call this regular meeting of the Kent Board of Selectmen to order, February 5th, 4:30. It is a regular monthly meeting, month of February, and we'll start off as always by saluting the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, is there anybody have anything to add to this agenda? Okay.
I do like the new agenda format.
We'll see. It's a major change, but we'll see. I do want to comment though that this is perhaps the longest agenda that I've ever seen for a monthly meeting. So I'm not telling anybody to not speak up and speak their piece and speak their mind, but let's.
It's only one page.
Yeah, but it's full, so it's never been 2 pages. I don't think.
Okay. Something to hang our hat on.
Let's just keep that in mind as we move forward. So having said that, does anybody have any oral communications from the audience? Mr. Rogers.
I've applied for the state money for the bridge on Carter Road replacement. We discussed it a few months ago. We moved money around in the capital for it through the Board of Finance. Because it's state money, they want to have a public information meeting, and we would like to do that like an hour before the next Wetlands Commission meeting, which we're on the agenda for. So, like February 25th, around 6 o'clock.
February
25th.
We'll be warning that in the paper later this week or beginning of next week. So, and the official times and all that. So
It's an informational hearing.
just information, that's all. And then we're applying for the wetlands permit that night, so we'll do both the same night.
And this is necessitated by the fact that federal money is being used.
State money.
State money is part of this bridge replacement, same as what we did with the bigger Carter Road Bridge.
I had federal money in it, this one's just state.
Okay.
Local bridge work.
What date, time do you?
Probably be 6 o'clock, which would be an hour before the meetings. It probably won't take that long, but.
And there'll be, and the engineers will be there.
Yes. I have to be there for the wetlands permit that night.
And people that would be affected by it on the road will be notified.
It'll be in the paper, on the website, and
Yeah.
if we want to send letters to the people on the road, we can do that too.
Okay. Do you need any action from us to?
Only if you want.
We'll have to set a hearing, wouldn't
We set that, or I guess we'd have to set that.
we? You set the
The
hearing.
board wants to set the hearing, or?
So I would move per request of Rick Osborne, road foreman, that we schedule a public informational hearing here at the Kent Town Hall on February 25th at 6 o'clock p.m. To present information and discuss the rebuild of, we'll call it the Carter Road Bridge, but it's a much smaller than the one that was replaced last year. But it's just beyond that one. I don't know where that is. Second. And this is something that's necessary.
Why does the state require a public hearing? Just out of curiosity.
Just to get the information out.
They do the same thing with railroad work.
I mean, it's a very good idea to notify the impacted residents.
Yeah, we did that with the bigger one, so. Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Rick. That just happened today, right, with your meeting with Tim?
Yeah.
Good timing. Okay, under written, we have 4 things. We have a request from Deidre Holahan DeCara, Executive Director of FISH. No connection to FISH here in Kent. This is an organization based in Torrington that stands for Friends in Service to Humanity of Northwest Connecticut, Inc. And they're asking to be, they're asking to be part of our grant section of our budget. So I think my response to it would be, if they're interested, that they should submit the paperwork that we asked everybody else to submit this year to get involved in the process. She's not here, and I wasn't expecting her to be here, so. All also, there's no requested amount in here, so.
Yeah, and they do cover Kent?
They do, I spoke with Leah about it, and Leah's very familiar with it, and they do, and we don't, it's basically a shelter for homeless in Litchfield County, and while we don't use it much, it is used, so Leah was aware of it. So I'll send her a letter and
That
ask
makes
her
sense.
to
Yeah. fill
fill out I'll send her the paperwork as well that we came up with for this budget.
Be the right thing to do.
The second item is good news. I applied over a year ago for a grant through the Connecticut DOT through a program called the Community Connectivity Grant Program. It was after we signed up for and took advantage of a road safety audit, which was a very good exercise. This was money that was made available after that road safety audit program. And we didn't get it. The only local towns that got it at that time were Salisbury and Torrington. But I did receive a letter dated January 18th announcing that some additional funds have somehow appeared, and we are a congratulated recipient of a community connectivity grant of $400,000 to go towards the streetscape. The third one is the usual staff report from Donna. Yeah,
Do you want to discuss this during the streetscape, or do you want to discuss this now?
whatever you want. What?
A grant, you guys have to approve
Yeah,
the
we have to
request.
approve it, and it did say, have you had contacted all of them afterwards?
Yep.
So you said that we are interested,
I
we were
just
just
told
waiting
them
to
to
get.
get one out. We were still interested since it was a while ago that I applied for it. Yes, I did tell them that.
We'll initiate environmental screening review for each
Yeah, they'll
project.
give us some services as well that will help, assuming we go forward with the streetscape project, they'll give us some services that will be helpful in that.
And do you
Back of the
know
letter.
if anyone from the streetscape has looked at this, whether this makes, is there any overlap that we're gonna be saying? You know what I mean?
I would say that on the back of the letter, number one would be something that would probably may well be an overlap. The biggest overlap will be, as we well know, the sidewalks of Kent are the property of the Connecticut DOT. So now we've got $400,000 from the DOT. So I would venture, and the only contact I've had is a 1 or 2 minute phone call telling me, yes, we're still interested. So but I would guess that there would be some additional services available to us.
Well, if I'm reading item 3 right, they would provide a project manager as well.
Correct. Project to assist in that.
So-
Project administration, so that.
So I guess what we should talk about is in the streetscape, is there, project manager, this would be nice to cover.
How they interleave,
Yeah,
Oh, what?
how they interleave would be an issue to discuss.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that.
That sounds
at this
great.
point. It just happened, so. They did contact me again and via email and said, don't do anything, don't spend the money, there's still paperwork to be done, processed, and all that. They just wanted to let us know, that's all.
well, I can make a motion that we accept the grant as proposed.
Chris, are there any strings? Like, do you have to use,
We need a second.
Second.
Strings in what way?
like, would you have to do prevailing wages or something like that? I mean,
Prevailing wage now for new construction is, I forget, they did increase the limits, I can't remember what it is now, so.
I'm just asking, are there
Yeah.
strings?
It doesn't say that
It
here.
doesn't say that, but prevailing wage, we don't have to use prevailing wage just because it's state funded, but if it falls over the prevailing wage cap, which as I said was increased for new construction, yes, prevailing wage will have to be.
How does this relate to the other grant? I mean, is it just more money thrown into the bucket?
It's more money thrown into the bucket, it's from two state agencies, but two unrelated state agencies. One is the Main Street Investment Fund, the other is the Connecticut DOT. grants were applied for the same purpose.
Is there gonna be any conflict between the two agencies over use of the funds?
No.
Maybe we can race. One up the other.
The DOT, so I don't want to say that, right? No, my understanding, we developed a pretty good working relationship with the community connectivity program when we did the road safety audit. They came here with engineers and spent a full day here with myself and Rick and others from the committee. And we gained a lot of great information, and they took a ton of pictures, and they gained a lot of information from us. So I think it's going to be nothing but a win for us in the end.
So I guess the question is, they are aware that we are getting money from another funding
Yes.
source?
Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
So the only detail I have on this one right now is the paper in front of you. There will be more to come.
You want to vote on it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Number 3, Donna has her report. Donna, is there anything you wanted to mention, or no, not on this one?
Bruce, before you go on, can I ask a question?
About,
Not about Donna, no, just, about public comment. I'm back on public comment. I read in the newspaper, the Waterbury Republican this morning, that the Lieutenant Governor is really pushing the census. Who's in charge of the census in Kent?
I don't have an answer for that question.
Oh.
I don't know. They're pushing a non-required program, which towns may or may not opt into. I can show you some information. I just learned about it today, not from the article in the paper, but something else.
Yeah, seems like we need somebody in charge of the census in Kent. It's got political ramifications and.
Well, they want a committee formed. You nominated.
Hey, if it means doing it, I think it's an important thing to do, I really do. I'm not being flip about
I
it.
just got it today, so it'll be discussed.
It's not the state that conducts the census?
This is something in addition to, and I'm sorry for my ignorance, because I just got it an hour or two ago. It's something in addition to the regular, the census will go on whether we opt into this or not, obviously. But it apparently is another layer, making the census perhaps a little bit more useful, the statistics gathered more useful, more specific to Kent and so forth. So.
This is like a state add-on to the national census.
Right. Yeah, so.
And you say you just got information on
Just.
what's coming down?
Yeah, I'll pass it on to you.
Does it have anything to do with citizenship, or
I don't know.
will it
In grant
inhibit
funding?
people, or
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know.
stay tuned?
I don't have any idea. Okay.
My report.
I
Okay,
haven't gotten to that yet.
sorry, I just want to make sure you weren't going on to the next.
Right
Sorry,
here.
thank you.
The assessor has asked me to distribute these. The assessor's office has been hard at work completing the required grand list statistics and submitting them to the state. Bottom line is, you'll notice in the dark band along the bottom, the grand list is down a little tiny bit over 2%. If you're wondering why, the reasons under notes are worth a look. Registered motor vehicles has declined a bit. Land values have declined since the last reval in 2013. As Chris will likely attest, the market has remained static. The grand list has decreased from the last reval, and as far as real estate, there have been some real estate demolitions. There has been some properties that have been put in 490 some acreage, and there have been a few properties that have been changed over to tax exempt. For specifics, you need to talk to the assessors. Questions, comments? somewhat frantic because it was a little bit last minute from Region 1 Business Manager Sam Herrick informing us that, quote, "The state is requiring that the following motions be made by the Board of Selectmen." This is for the Kent Center School window project. These motions, which were made by the Board of Education and Board of Finance respectively, were provided to the state several months ago with the attached minutes from the Board of Finance meeting where the Board of Finance approved the funding for the project. The state assures me that the project will be able to move forward as long as we get the certified minutes to them for each motion before February 7th, 2019. Mr. Herrick came down here by mistake yesterday, and after checking with him and checking with Barbara, was decided he didn't need to be here today, make a second trip, so he has provided some motions which we need to put into the record so that the whole thing can be submitted to the state and this project can be funded.
What is the project? What is the window project?
Replacement of windows at Kent Center School.
All windows?
No.
No.
Number 1, the Town of Kent Board of Selectmen authorized the superintendent to apply for a grant for the Kent Center School window project. That's motion number 1. I will make it.
Second.
Seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion number 2, the Town of Kent Board of Selectmen establish a building committee for the Kent Center School window project. This has already been done. It's made up of Marty Lindenmeyer, Chairman of the Board of Education, Bill Hurley, the head custodian at Kent Center School, Mike Van Valkenburg, former selectman, graduate of Kent Center School and jack of all trades, and Alan Prio, former member of the Board of Education and former chairman of the building committee. I will move to establish that building committee.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion number 3, there are 4 altogether. The town of, the Board of Town of, he wrote it wrong. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Kent authorized the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for the Kent Center School window project. Motion by me.
Second.
Second by Jeff.
Do you need to rewrite the English on that motion?
Yes, I read it the way it should read, I believe. The Board of Selectmen of the Town of Kent.
Well, the other two were the Town of Kent Board of Selectmen. They left out the word Kent, so.
Okay, Town of
Just put
Kent
the
Board
word
of
Kent.
Selectmen, you left that out. Read it one more time. Town of Kent Board of Selectmen authorize the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for the Kent Center School window project. Motion's been made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And the last one, the Town of Kent Board of Selectmen approved the funding amount of $380,675.72 for the Kent Center School window project as outlined by on the attached spreadsheet and approved by the Kent Board of Finance. This has been discussed previously by the Board of Finance with the Board of
So moved.
Education. Moved by Chris,
And second.
second by Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes showing the approval of each of these motions must be certified by the Town of Kent, town clerk, and provided on Town of Kent letterhead, and that will be done tomorrow. Thank you.
Bruce, is this a grant where you have to spend the money and then you get reimbursed?
Most of the grants are, but I don't know that. I'm just doing what I was told.
There's
Well,
Board of Finance hadn't already taken action on, I wouldn't have done this, but they have, so I don't know.
And, yeah, and that motion is only for that certain amount.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, B, this is an every year thing. This is for fiscal year 2018, the State Homeland Security Grant. And I asked Rick Lynn, who's the executive director of COG, who administers this grant every year, to just give me a brief explanation of what it's for, why I'm asking sign it. I got it all filled out, and it's awaiting my signature. He writes, each year, Demis Region 5, of which we are a part, is a huge part of Connecticut, which includes the town of Connecticut, has allocated about $300,000 in Homeland Security grant funding. That's for the whole Region 5. It is up to the local CEOs to decide how to spend these grant funds based on the allowable expenses, which include planning, training, and selected equipment. For example, most of the variable message signs and light towers being acquired in the region are being purchased with these Homeland Security grant funds. In order to continue receiving the funds, the 43 member towns of Region 5 are required to sign the annual MOU. Let me know if you wish to discuss. This is something that we've signed every year.
In the past, how have you, how's it been implemented? $300,000 amongst 43 towns.
Well,
I mean, somebody's-
what they do is they purchase, and he gave the examples here of light towers. I'll use that one as an example since we house one. They make purchases, all that are at the disposal of all the towns in Region 5. For example, in the famous ice jam last year, there was a need for flat bottom boats. We got a couple, never used them, but we got a couple from other towns that housed them. They were purchased with these funds. There was a request for a many-wheeled large truck. Found one in Woodbury. They house it, purchased with these funds, used, didn't get it, didn't need it, but it was there. And lots of other things for that particular instance. The light tower, we house one at the town garage. It can be used for anything for lighting for the streets for the Champagne Stroll to lighting in an emergency. We have a programmable message sign that we also house here, and they're all over.
What I was getting at more was, like, do you attend meetings to discuss what?
Yeah. These meetings are held quarterly in Watertown, at which time the decisions are made as to what's purchased with these funds. Some I don't agree with. Well, here's one that I personally thought was somewhat of a waste of money, and I didn't have any input in this. 4 or 5 years ago, I got a call from one of the top guys in Demis Region 5 saying, we hear you might have some room to store some equipment for us. And I said, well, it depends on what it is. Well, what it was they had purchased, I'm going to say 40 of those, they call them Cambro containers. They're about this big, and they have a spigot on them. They're for beverage dispensing, along with some matching pans that could be carried in a something that would keep the contents warm, along with some spoons and spoodles. We learned what a spoodle is, which is a combination of spoon and ladle. So we have spoodles. So we got a whole set, as did all the towns in Region 5. Well, it turns out they ordered too many. They are now in the boiler room at the Kent Community House, safe and sound, still in their original boxes, and probably will be there for, that was a case where I don't think it was well spent, thought out-wise. But most of what's purchased is stuff that has been used, is used regularly, and is there for all of us in case of emergency. So I filled out the form online. You have to fill it out electronically. It needs my signature, and assuming you authorize me to do so, it also needs a certification by the town clerk tomorrow.
Did anybody say anything about how this relates to Homeland Security and who made them and made the money on the purchase? And is there any connection between whoever made that decision and that person?
Did you understand what you said?
No, I make a motion. That you accept that?
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Just
I have no idea.
Ridiculous.
Just a question, Bruce. We have over 20 of those in the boiler room. Can we donate some of those to?
We can't. They're not ours to donate.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the.
But other people use them,
Total
and
effect.
Leslie uses a few of them. We use them at the Memorial Day Parade.
Oh, what?
They're there.
That's
They
nice.
said use them.
To direct traffic?
No.
No, the
Just
water,
like
you put
containers.
beverage in.
Containers.
So-
Containers. We use them to dispense juice and stuff at the reception at the end of the parade.
I was confused with the ladle, the spoodle.
The ladles with the spoodle, we use it at senior lunch. If anybody wants to see a spoodle, come on over to seniors. Okay, thank you for that authorization. C, a recycling ordinance. No action needed today on this, because I've been in contact with Jen at HRA, but this is an ordinance, the purpose of which is to be added to our existing ordinance on recycling and solid waste, which we have a lengthy one in our ordinances. Not to replace it, not to do away with it, but to add to it. Town attorney has gone through it. He has given the okay to sign it. The HRA attorney has gone through it at length at meetings that I have been in attendance. He urges all towns to sign it. I'm not asking you for authority to sign it right today. I spoke with Jen today, and she'd like the opportunity to take this ordinance that's being proposed and combine it seamlessly with our existing ordinance, so we still keep what we've already got. The purpose of this is the state of Connecticut has, for the past couple of years, been telling all the towns that they are going to be in need of updating their material management strategy, which is a fancy way of saying the way that we collect and recycle trash. And that's the purpose of this proposed ordinance, is the compliance with the Supreme Court's mandates, several statute adjustments, and years of HRA operations to make all the towns in compliance with what the state is mandating by, I believe it's 2020.
What's the financial impact on Kent? Just
there should be no financial impact on Kent. But I asked her today.
Will be the impact?
What?
Will there be any impact?
Well, impact specifically caused by this ordinance, none. Impact caused by the state mandating a higher rate of recycling. For example, I don't have the exact year, I'm thinking 2021, 22, they're going to be mandating that towns need to have a 60% recycle rate. Well, first of all, it's hard to find out what your recycle rate is. I can tell you that ours 10 years ago when I was first elected was 17%, and believe it or not, that was considered at the time fairly high. They're talking about increasing it to 60%. We do a pretty good job at our transfer station of recycling.
Well, I mean, what I was getting at is this is really one of those unfunded mandates from the state that we end up paying the cost of any changes we need to make at the recycling center.
Good point. I don't think it's going to require any changes. I do have something I will send you that I think will set my mind at ease. I hope it will yours as well. For example, one of the big controversies is this whole concept of put and pay in transfer station. I don't know if you've read about that in the paper, where you basically buy bags and you bring your bag to the transfer station, and the less trash you generate, you don't pay anything for recycling. The less trash you generate, the smaller your bag, and the less the bag will cost you, and the less it will cost you to use the transfer station. Highly, highly controversial wherever it's proposed. And I and other town leaders have asked, is this ordinance in any way going to make us do that? Because the state would like everybody to do that, and the answer is a resounding no. Not yet anyway, but it's not in this ordinance. That's just one example. But you're likely right, but no action needed. But let me get you this information for your consideration next time. Okay? And I'll hopefully have the whole thing put together next time with our existing ordinance put together with this proposed state ordinance. But I was assured we would take action today. The next thing on the agenda is a request from the Park and Recreation Commission to hold their summer concert series once again on 4 specific dates on the lawn of the Kent Town Hall from 6 to 8. And the this year are gonna add a 5th one at Kent Common Park in July. I attended some of those concerts, enjoyed them, and see no reason why we should not give our endorsement. So I would move to endorse those concert series as proposed by Kent Park and Recreation.
Is it something we need to endorse?
They would like us to. Yes, Leslie?
We ask for use of the front lawn every year as a courtesy, so yes,
So it's the use of the front lawn.
not to rest.
Yeah, not whether we agree with having concerts or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I get?
Sure.
Okay. So anything you want to add to that, Leslie?
No, pretty simple.
Okay. All in favor?
Thank you.
The Park and Recreation Commission also is proposing, as a result of their meeting this last week, to create a Parks Master Plan Subcommittee. Appointed 3 commission members to the subcommittee and charged it to bring to the commission an RFQ and budget for hiring a company to develop a master plan for the 2 town parks. The commission would like a representative from the Board of Selectmen and/or the Board of Finance to sit on this subcommittee. The commission appreciates your consideration of this request. I'm guessing that John may have a word or two to say on this topic, yes?
No, basically, we're just in the early stages, so yeah, definitely we need some voices here, so definitely step up.
So are you looking at, does this letter look for endorsement of this concept, or is it just looking for someone to
Representation, and
represent?
then we will, the commission will be coming back to the Board of Selectmen for funding.
At a later date?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When is that later date, do you think? Is it gonna be our budget year?
Yeah, I'm
It
not,
could be,
possibly.
yeah, it could be.
So I guess the only thing I would question is, why do you need a subcommittee? Why couldn't you just put in your budget request?
Because they need to develop what they're looking for
So
a
that's-
firm to do, and some of that conversation has already happened, but we feel that this is the, the way we want to move forward.
So, just so I understand, you're asking for a subcommittee to be created, of which is Park and Rec members and somebody from one of these 2 boards?
And probably a community member as well.
Sounds like the subcommittee has already been created.
Yes, you don't have to ask, but we're asking that somebody participate from the board.
And so, obviously, you've not reached out to any person who does master planning.
Yes,
You
we
guys,
have.
has the subcommittee already decided, generally speaking, what they want?
No, not yet.
No,
No.
No.
So the subcommittee you have, but you haven't met?
they just were named, so at
Just
the end,
named.
They were
at
just
the end of
named on
January.
January 28th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless either of you are dying to serve on said committee, I'll volunteer as a past member and chairman of the Park and Rec.
Their request is either a selectman or a member of the Board of Finance, and I think one of the issues is the proposed budget for the management assessment, so maybe somebody from the Board of Finance. But if you're willing to show up, by all means.
Maybe it could be shared by,
It's up to you guys.
It's up to you guys, yeah.
I'll volunteer money.
Okay.
Glad to have you on board.
And just another meeting on your agenda.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we'll bring this to the Board of Finance.
You will
at
bring it
their-
to the Board of Finance? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
2019-20 operating budget. I just received, and I assume you just received the budget in its real raw state. And I don't think today is the day to really dig into it, because there's a lot of inaccuracies. Inaccuracies isn't the right word, but I went through it and found a lot of questions that I had. And the reason I had questions is because the documentation supporting some of the increases, we don't have them yet, so Barbara's in the process of getting ready to get those out to us. So I don't think we're in a position right now to do any more with this budget, other than set some dates for upcoming workshops. I hope you have your calendars with you. schedule that we put out at the beginning of this process back in December said we would have budget workshop number 1 this week.
And typically, how many do you do in a workshop week?
How many, say again?
I'm sorry, how many departments or groups do
Oh,
you do in a
well,
week
well,
typically
the
in a
first
workshop?
the first thing we would need to decide is what we want to do with workshop number 1. So for example, we want to have that be the beginnings of meeting with department heads. And if that's the case, then how many do we do? Depends on, how we wanted to do a marathon like we did with.
Well, have the departments returned their packets?
I believe all have, not yet.
No, all have not.
All have not. Most have. So we could start there, we can start meeting with those that have. We also, at least traditionally, we have met with any of the entities that receive $10,000 or more from the town in the form of a grant. So fire department, library, the two biggest ones, there's 5 in all. We could do them probably all in one night. We usually do those in the evening because of the availability of the people. We could do that. Might be a little short notice for that, for this week, but that is one we need to do. We traditionally have gotten that taken care of in one meeting. We also have the paperwork that we requested from the grant recipients. We set up the.
Well, traditionally, the workshop number 3 is the wrap-up, right? Where we
Well, our
take this.
ultimate goal is presentation of the budget on March 19th to the Board of Finance.
Right, but we have a final vote on the budget
So the
to go
wrap-up-
to them on the 5th, is that correct?
That's our regular meeting.
Right,
Our
which
regular
makes
meeting.
sense, so we don't have to have a special meeting.
Right, so we could have a special meeting after that if we needed to, but the goal, if all goes as planned, is to vote on the budget to bring to the Board of Finance and have that vote by March, be ready to vote on March 5th.
And do we know how many backup data, whatever we need on each of the departments do we have?
How many departments we have?
Do we have enough to do this week? For all?
Yes.
Most of them?
We have enough to do this week. Yeah, we have,
Because the next week rolls pretty quickly, so whoever is laggards, we better have that stuff ready for the following week. Joyce, do you know how many are outstanding?
2, I think,
Only 2.
yeah.
Of how many do we?
Well, it depends what you're classifying as a department, but
as we just go through it, we want to meet for the selectmen's portion, and that's meeting primarily with Joyce, who put that together. We need to meet with the registrars, and they're one that has not submitted theirs. We need to meet with the treasurer, who has submitted hers, the assessor, who has not, who gives you the grand list. The tax collector has not yet.
So
County town clerk has, planning and zoning has,
10, 11,
building
11.
has.
So we roughly have 10 or 11, I think, according to Joyce, so why don't we do 5 this week and 5 next week?
Yep,
And then the 2 that aren't, we'll push them into next week,
right,
to look at the information.
okay.
And then the 3rd week, we should be then compiling it and then digging through outside of that.
Well, yeah,
I think.
and it'll give me time to get a hold of all those outside groups, like the library has already come in and asked about availability, because they're limited as to when they get that kind of thing.
Right, so I would think-
Schedule set up. So I should shoot for workshop number 3 for that, grant recipients.
Yeah, I know the fire department, and this is dovetailing into the meetings that we've had,
Yep.
are delayed themselves, so they want to be pushed back as far as possible.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
All right, so I've got that down for week, for number 3, so let's set a date for workshop number 1 this week. And we're dealing with people that work here in the building, so in most cases,
this is the week, so it's either Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, right?
Yeah.
Or deep into this.
I would like to ask it to be tomorrow.
Can't be,
You gotta
24
warn it.
hours.
You gotta warn it.
4 hours to warn it, right? It's gotta be 7 or 8.
Okay, then Thursday the 7th, but I will probably have to leave in the afternoon, let's
That's fine.
say 2 o'clock, so it's gotta be late morning. Or if we want, trying to do it,
Could start right away, 9 o'clock,
okay. Sure.
9:15.
9:15.
I have to be able to warn it tomorrow, I need 24 hours.
Right.
No, that's true.
And then anticipating till when? How long? When do you have to leave?
I don't know for sure, plan on 2 o'clock.
All right, so
The,
Yeah, we should be able to get through that.
I hope so.
Possible,
Five or so.
possible I could stay later, but it depends, it's unconfirmed.
That should be fine, so 9:15, department head. Okay, how about the following week?
I
I
can't do
can't do-
Monday and
I
I cannot
can't
do
do-
Tuesday.
I can't do Thursday, I'm out. Thursday. You said which days, Chris? You
I can't do Monday, Tuesday.
Monday, Tuesday. So it looks like Wednesday or Friday.
Wednesday, afternoon/evening is the only day of the week I can do it.
Okay. You're talking late afternoon, starting when, Jeff?
Let's say 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Wednesday the 13th, correct?
Wednesday the 13th,
1 o'clock, okay?
department heads.
You should have to be done by 5.
I do.
Thank you.
Yep, I have to be out of here by 5. And they may have to run out to draw the winning ticket in a raffle at the formal close to it. So, okay, and then workshop number 3, assuming we can get all the department heads done in those 2 meetings, will be sometime the 3rd week. Where town hall is closed on the 18th. Otherwise, I can do any day that week.
I can't do Friday, but
Okay.
every other day is,
If you want it to be evening, I have to go to a meeting at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, so probably that's out. So we're talking then Wednesday, Thursday,
I'm out Wednesday after 6 o'clock.
okay? So we're talking Thursday, Jeff. Are you available Thursday, the 20th, 21st,
I don't think so.
late afternoon, evening?
I think I'll be gone all day. I think the only day that week I can commit to is Wednesday, early in the day.
I can do Wednesday early in the day.
Okay, so let me see if some of those people can be available, like the library might be available. And with enough advance notice, some of the others might be. So number 3, grants, 20th, what time? I can do any
Morning.
time.
So
1?
9:15.
Yeah, whatever. In the morning is fine.
9:15. Okay. Okay, and that takes us up to our regular meeting on the 5th. So I would suggest we stop at that point
Mhm.
and see how we stand come the 5th. Yes.
Since I have to do the warning, what do you plan on discussing in the first meeting and with whom? So if I need to list, are you gonna discuss people's salaries? Because then there's potential for executive session, so I need to know who.
Yes, and so it would be, I would say it would be the people who have submitted their packets by this time. They should be asked first.
We need that list for the motion.
Okay, so I would,
So we have everybody but the tax collector and
The register of voters,
register of
tax
voters
collector, and assessors.
and
the
the
only-
tax assessor. So there are only 3 of 11. All right, so we have 8 to choose from.
yeah, so Board of Selectmen, treasurer.
Want to be here?
In the afternoon, sure.
She's
No, not on
in-
Thursday.
No,
Oh,
Thursday.
Thursday, you're limiting, that's right.
next week?
I can only do at night if you wanna have John and Lynn here.
Oh.
Lynn works full-time, so she has to, it's gotta be a nighttime thing, and wanted me to come in for building, and Joe doesn't come in until 3 o'clock. So that day does not work for me.
Yeah, well, we can always kick that to the next
Yeah.
week.
We gotta make
We have to do night ones.
enough.
They're separate line items, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
So
They're all
you could
separate
meet with,
departments.
you could meet with John potentially, you and John, and then you could come in another time maybe? No?
No, I want John and Lynn to do it together, that was what was decided when we had our meeting.
Well, I think what we decided when we had our meeting was that,
That Lynn and
That you
John
had
would
two
meet
different
with
people.
me
Right.
and you together.
yeah.
That was what was decided.
Social services. Transfer station. So we can get 5.
How many do we have?
That's 4.
4? Can we throw some grants in there? I mean, the grants have already been put in. How many grant recipients do we have to deal with,
We need to,
aside from the big ones?
well, the only ones that we generally
Only one that's-
meet with are the big ones, which are the library, the fire department, the nursery school, the cemetery association, and, there's 5.
Well, plus on the smaller grants, isn't it something we should have on our agenda to discuss?
Yeah.
Without a
Discuss,
meeting?
not necessarily.
Not with meetings
them,
with the
discuss them.
requester. We need to review it and discuss.
Most definitely.
Excuse me.
Leah?
Since my office works on appointments, I need adequate notification so that I don't book a bunch of people
Mhm.
coming in for financial need or other needs.
Right.
You know, I need some kind of something,
I can put you first.
some kind of something.
Some kind of meeting that Thursday is too short notice for you, is that what you're saying?
I have to go check my calendar, make sure. But it just, you know what I mean, because I don't know how the other departments necessarily work, but I work on appointments,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I guess we could sit here fumbling around with this, let's schedule it. You need specifics, Joyce, for a warning, correct? That's
Correct.
the only reason we need specifics,
If you wanna do ZBA, I can come in for ZBA.
okay?
This is kind of a technical question, but if you go into executive session to discuss merits of an employee, don't you have some sort of standards set before that we all can see? Or is it, how are you doing that for merit?
Well, historically, we've not been in executive session for these budget workshops.
No, no.
If they come in and then there's a budget layout and there's a request for whatever line, pick your line, at which point we discuss, we say thank you, we ask for backup and we wonder what's going on here and there and we ask different questions. And then we digest it. If there's an issue specifically with someone's salary line, then we can at some other point go into an executive session.
There are, if you look through this budget document.
I have.
There are some of those.
Right, but you don't have to go any further than this is my request.
Oh, no. No.
And then what are we here for?
Well, why is it your request? Why are you making the request?
Well, if I'm gonna if my request for a salary increase is gonna be based on my performance, which I haven't seen a performance review yet, I'm still have the right to go into executive session to discuss that. Isn't that?
Just to present your request?
Well, I don't understand why we have to come in and present the request and then turn around and walk out and then come back in again. Like, isn't it more efficient to do everything all at the same time, I guess is what I'm asking, and that's the way it's always been done before.
We're trying to find a way to do it, and it's not working,
Well-
time-wise.
Well,
I think what, at least my train of thought is that the request comes in with rationale, and so you made a comment about, I'm sorry, merit or on
Performance evaluation?
Thank you, performance evaluation, thank you for that clarification. I don't think that that's what's happened here. We aren't, I'm speaking for myself, but I don't know what you guys, but I'm not prepared in any shape or form for a performance because there's nothing to do. We haven't created a document as requested by, or at least brought up by. So,
It's not this series of meetings to really get budget information for the department. I mean, it's not just salary, so it's the whole department, including salary request. So I think the request gets put in, and we determine if, at a later date, if we're gonna try to make some individual merit increases or do an across-the-board increase, but that's something we discuss later.
But that wasn't what was communicated at any of the meetings that we had with you.
What do you mean? Well, I don't understand what you mean. What he just said is what we do every year at these meetings.
Correct, but this year you changed it and you specifically told employees that their 1920 salary would be based upon a January and February review of their performance.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's what
Is
you
that
told
how you
people.
believe it?
But we don't have universal standards.
I understand that, Debbie, but the point is we were told in management review, executive session meetings, that this year's budget was going to be based on merit, based upon reviews.
If we chose to go with merit.
No.
That was
There's been no decision made by.
There has been no decision by this board.
Merit pay. It's
Oh
been
my
discussed ad nauseum, but there's never been a decision made that there was going to be merit pay
I was specifically told
this
that I had
year.
to meet with Bruce after my January and February performance, and then my salary would be determined based upon my meeting with Bruce.
And I was told
Is that true or false?
I disagree.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jeff, is that true or false?
Was that an executive session? You can't discuss that.
I can if I choose to, and I'm choosing to divulge that is what I was told.
Okay, restate what you are asserting.
That I should be meeting with Bruce the beginning of February, the beginning of March, and at that time, after my reviews were conducted, my salary would be determined.
I guess I don't see it exactly that way. We're talking about making adjustments. We talked about making adjustments to standardize the number of working hours.
I understand that, but I'm talking about my base merit increase. There was two separate issues that were raised during my conversation. And the
We
merit
have not
raise.
committed to a merit increase to anyone, anywhere.
You haven't committed to it, but what was it gonna be based on?
We've discussed it a lot, whether to go
And
to merit pay
discussing it a
or
lot,
not.
and
And we're still haven't come to the consensus. And I think, as we mentioned, the challenge that we face is we are not in a position, take the Goshen step that's going on right now where they are rushing to get this done. And I don't think it's our position that we want to rush and try to get a system in place for this next budget.
You asked Lynn and John to come back at a nighttime meeting with a performance evaluation that Lynn was going to format on the HVAC HVA performance evaluation that
Accurate.
she uses.
Accurate.
Yeah.
And
Does that
that
mean-
my
I agree with that as
salary,
well.
so that it would be based on,
That was,
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
yeah,
Right?
that was my understanding.
Oh, everything you've said to this, to
That
that
was
point.
the criteria that would be used.
For
No,
that
it would,
department.
Right,
Right.
and each department, I would.
well, I think the nuance is there is maybe a perception that was given that we were going to do that and that we had voted to do that. That is not what's been done. We have made no proclamation. We have made no motion or accepted any change in that process.
So all of these conversations that we've had in the past about how performance evaluations, you need to at least give people a year in advance, that you never agreed with any of that.
That's not
You
true.
said,
They were conversations that we had. We were discussing something that's been out there for a few years now.
so then in other words, the only things that we as employees can put stock in is things that you say that are associated with a motion. So anything else that you have said to us at any time in any meetings really has no weight. because you're telling us now that because no motion was made, that it doesn't apply. Is that basically
That's
how we're supposed to be moving forward at this point in time?
my understanding of the way municipal government works is, I guess the short answer to your statement you just made is yes. Everything's a motion.
Unbelievable.
Everything is a motion.
However, let's be clear.
In this world.
So misleading, Bruce.
Everything is.
You know very well that this whole situation has been misleading from the very beginning.
Well, maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was. It was not intentional on the part of anybody to be misleading. But, and we've disagreed on a lot of things, but I think one thing we do agree on, that nowhere did we, any of us, say that we are going to go to a merit pay form of compensation.
Okay, so then
We
why
never
is it
said
that
that.
everybody that walked out of the meetings that they had with you, even people who are not employees, but who are volunteers, are under the impression that that was how it was going to be handled?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't know that because it was an executive session, but you apparently do. So
I do know, I'm sorry, can you say that?
what you just stated, you shouldn't even know that if you were talking to employees that were in executive session.
I'm talking about the conversation that we had about myself.
Well, then you were talking about other employees as well. Is my
So to answer your question, part of what we need is rationale as to where salaries stand. One, we're using COG, we're using lots of different, we're using the management
The
input.
management review that you paid $5,000.
Good, go ahead, 5,000 grand, great. And tell you what it did is it prompted this discussion, which I think is positive. And so to that degree, yes, I think it's important still to have your department heads coming in and saying, yes, this person deserves this because we believe this, we believe that. So I would say once again, the direction that we gave you and others is still warranted. There are going to be some people coming in with their department heads that say they do a great job, we don't foresee any increase in this line item of salary. There are going to be others that are going to come in and say, we believe that this merits a salary change.
Well, that's already shown in the document.
And it's already been shown. So all we're asking for is that to be seen and that to be demonstrated. I think in your specific case, as you brought it up, your department heads coming in, there's going to be a lot of weight behind that. And that's what we're going to consider. There's another issue, which is, what do you do with somebody right now who hasn't changed their line item or their salary line? Do we give them across the boards, or do we do increases? We have nothing right now to somebody who hasn't requested more in their department on their salary line to give them a raise, if you will.
For example, cost of living.
Thank you, Debbie. For example, a cost of living.
And you know, just to go back to whether or not we committed to actually using merit-based pay, I know I have. I'm not going to speak for anyone else because I personally don't even believe that it's going to work. So I know I wouldn't have committed to it.
You haven't committed to it. You've said very
I know
clearly.
I haven't. I didn't say I'm 100% vehemently opposed to it, but I know I haven't committed to it because I personally don't think it's going to work.
You have been pretty consistent on that.
And when I surveyed a limited number of town leaders at the most recent COG executive committee meeting I was at, it was only 5 or 6 of us, not the whole group, all of them said they use across the board increases, sometimes based on what the union settlement is with the highway guys, sometimes based on cost of living, what have you, but none of them use merit pay. So I'm not saying,
I got you.
I'm not saying that's a reason not to try it. They're trying it in Goshen. I'm not saying it's not gonna work. But at this point, I personally.
Okay, for this round of budget meetings, my expectation was the presentations from the departments was gonna be similar to last year. The department financial requests and requests for salary increases. We take it, discuss it, and review it, and act on it some other time.
And if we need to go into executive session
If
to
we need to,
discuss
we
it
can.
later,
Well, I
we
mean,
can do that. We can't do it without making part of the warning possible executive session, so.
Well, you can make it part of the warning if you deem it. I think that would make sense. But let me reiterate, any department that is asking for a salary increase should have their manager or their chair or whomever works with them on and oversees them, present at the meeting. I'm sorry?
The only thing I have an issue with, I don't have that kind of setup in my department. I don't have chair, other people, committee, you know, whatever. But here you're setting a schedule which starts this week for meetings, and you just made a statement about what people they should have present and.
We've made that clear in other executive session meetings.
Not mine.
Well, you don't have anyone
Well,
to.
you don't have anybody
As
to
you
bring.
just
But
stated.
even, excuse me,
I
but
mean,
that's not the point, but you're, as a whole group of employees, which are all employees, I don't see that that's fair to all departments, you know what I mean? Like, I think they should have fair warning and notice as an employee. Whether it affects me or not, I'm still an employee.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by fair warning and notice.
Well, you just said that, oh no.
No, well,
No,
that
it's
fair
right,
warning.
I withdraw my comment.
We've tentatively set a meeting for the 7th of this week. Are you saying that that's not enough fair warning and notice? I'm asking a question.
No, but maybe perhaps not in my case, but I'm speaking as a person that's an employee.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, and it should be fair and equitable to all departments, and I don't see that happening. Sure, it might work for me, but I don't see it working necessarily if that's how you're gonna be doing it.
Well, but
And
Donna's
everybody
just
have
stated
equal
that
time.
John and Lynn aren't available, so we won't meet with them on that date.
But just,
If they're not available, but
it's just not worth it, thank you.
Can we set the dates?
well, we set the dates, we just have to make sure we have enough people that can be at the dates. We set the dates of,
You know, I mean, can we set, who's in it? We have, right now, who do we have?
ZBA, BOS, social services, transfer station, and town clerk.
Treasurer too, I thought you had any?
It's
And
Thursday,
the
she doesn't
treasurer,
work on,
yeah.
she doesn't work on
Can't
Thursday.
work on Thursday.
she's not here, she might,
Transfer station? You had said transfer.
yeah, she said transfer station. I put treasurer tentatively, Barbara might be willing to do that, I don't know. That's for number 1, starting at 9:15. And then number 2 was 1 o'clock on the 13th. And we would-
Can the treasurer make that date? Or not?
Yes, that's a good time for the treasurer, because she does come on Wednesday afternoon.
Right, let's slate her in.
So let's just work on getting the one set for the 7th.
Yeah, but I'm just
And then
wondering.
we can, I can work on the others tomorrow. Because Joyce has to get a warning in for the 7th. right?
Anyone for, well, the grants.
I can work on that too,
So
the grant.
we've got everybody here that we can handle, that is prepared. 1, 2, Park and Rec. Can they meet on that this week?
I can meet, I don't know if the chairman person can meet, but I can find out.
Well, we can plug you in and always take you out, but we can't
Right.
plug you in if we
Put
can't.
me on.
Yeah,
Okay.
for Park and Rec.
So that's,
Well, that's plenty for that first date.
and then you'll take the balance and break them up.
Yes. I'll try. Okay, anything else related to this budget? Okay, moving onward. We have,
I have a question.
yes.
Can we get a copy of what it was that Barbara gave to you so that we can compare what we submitted to you and what you actually have?
Sure, I hope it matches, but yeah, here, take.
Because I do not believe that it's going to match in my case. So
Okay.
I'd like to make sure that it does.
Well, all departments should make sure these,
We don't see them.
We don't see it, that's why I'm
so
asking
how'd
for
the
that.
request get in?
I have another
I
copy.
just wanna make sure that what you requested is actually.
Yes,
what's
you
on
want
the
double
paper.
check, that makes sense,
Yeah.
please.
But no, we
Please
don't.
do.
Anybody
We
wants a
don't have
copy,
them.
I'd be happy to give you, I don't have more, I just happen to have one extra copy today. Okay, back to the agenda. Jeff, I think a request from you to, please add an agenda item for tomorrow's Board of Selectmen meeting called Policy Manual Update. You attached a couple of PDFs.
This actually is just kind of old business. After we negotiated the union contract,
Mhm.
one of the items we negotiated was a limitation on the opt-out provision for health insurance.
At
And
15,000.
we had requested 10, and as part of the negotiation, they came back and requested 15, so we agreed with that. And the policy manual is silent, has no limit. So this is a restatement of the policy manual reflecting that as the town policy.
This is an amendment to it, a proposed amendment to it.
Yes.
And which
The
is,
original language, well, it was color-coded, so the
Oh.
darker is the original language,
Okay.
and the lighter is the revised
the
language.
gray one, this gray one is the update?
The gray is the update, yes.
So it doesn't have, hang on.
And I did some wordsmithing, there were 2 redundant paragraphs, I combined them into one.
Shall be eligible to receive a stipend. Okay.
We can finalize this next meeting if you want to review it in a little more detail.
Yeah, I'd like a chance to, I had it.
I believe I did not change any of the substance, the payment dates are the same, the requirements for
Oh,
documentation
really,
is the same.
the only thing that should have been changed is the amount, which there was no amount.
Well, I also deleted a paragraph, in the original, paragraphs 2 and 3 were essentially, no, the last half of paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 were somewhat redundant. So I combined the language into more readable language.
All right, I was waiting to hear your explanation, so based on that statement, I think I'd like the opportunity to look it over.
And is this something Randy needs to look at or not? Just from a,
It wouldn't hurt.
and just make sure that this,
Okay, make sure he understands that this is existing in our policy manual,
mhm.
and it's rewriting the language for clarity.
So, and the email says the blue highlight is the current language, so it's the dark, right,
Mhm.
is the current, and the lighter.
Possibly we can arrange to give him a color-coded copy, because it didn't photocopy very well.
Here in town hall? Where did you?
To give it to Randy.
Oh, okay.
And I sent Joyce a PDF in color. And
Just
out
forward
of the
that
copy
on.
machine, it came out great.
Okay, all right. Okay, moving on, do you have an update on the KVFD subcommittee?
Yeah, yes, the KVFD passed a budget. They brought it to us and we.
Us being the committee?
The committee, thank you. And based on that, they're gonna go back and revise a little bit more on it. They do plan to be obviously at the workshop. They'd like to be, as I said, at the end of the schedule. Just to give you sort of a progress report, what has happened is they understand that the capital plan that we have been using, they understand that quite well now, and that it's for major projects or major undertakings certainly like we've been doing with the trucks. They are also going to go on a schedule to sort of look into how they, in the future for their trucks for that.
So they're gonna create one within the department?
So then the other thing they have created is a capital plan, an internal capital plan. And what that does is handle what, for lack of a better word, it's not the whales, like the 250 to 400, $500,000 trucks, but they're things like air packs and other substantial capital items that they have to acquire over time. So they have worked on trying to do a 5-year capital plan on that themselves, at which point then we're hoping that they can sustain that themselves through lots of different mechanisms. And what we're looking to achieve is a year over year, almost like a smoothing out of a budget like is typical in most budgets, which is their expense and revenues net out as a zero, or close to.
I've heard that they're in pretty good financial shape this year, is that correct?
Well, this year, due to some nice contributions, they've been able to run at a positive, at a surplus. And so we discussed surplus and what to do with that surplus, and that might be part of the funding overall
of their small capital campaign program. They've also considered other things like utilizing their investment fund, so there are a lot of moving parts there. But all in all, I think they have felt, they being the actual committee that we met with and representatives from the volunteer fire department, they've felt that this has been very productive. I think from the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen side, it's been very productive because now we have a commonality in terms of the language of the budget and feel that we're moving forward. How that will play out with respect to a request in the grant will be seen once they finalize their budget.
Well, actually, I do have a question. I've managed to make one of those meetings, and in that meeting, a point was brought up by a member of the Board of Finance that I thought was really interesting regarding legal and accounting fees. And as I understood the point, it seemed that the fire department doesn't really need to be spending, I think it was like $30,000 on legal and accounting. Was that addressed any further? Because I thought that was a very significant point.
Well, legal and accounting are two very different things.
Well, yeah, but I guess it was mostly accounting.
Yeah, in fairness to
You can see them having an accountant.
well, it's more than that. There's their contention that they need a CPA to be able to finalize their books for audits. That was questioned. Let me step back a little bit. While we have been making input and comments on how they spend the money and what they're spending it on, it was not the sentiment from outside the membership that we tell them what to do with their money. But what is very clear in their process, and as it evolves, is that they, it seems, are getting a handle on issues like that. So rather than just putting it in as a figure and saying, well, that's what we do every year, they are questioning line items. And that's really, I think, ultimately the best part of this exercise.
That was really the fundamental objective, was to get some a deeper thought into some of the items. Okay, thanks.
Good. Thank you. Continuing to do that.
Bruce, just related to the firemen, and I know it's not on your agenda, but we did get our list of firemen who will be exempt.
The abatement?
Will you be approving that at the next meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it.
Thank you.
I haven't seen it, so.
Oh, okay.
They delivered it to you?
And Darlene and I have it, yes.
I haven't seen it.
Oh.
Okay, old business. The Western Connecticut Clean Air Action, as you are hopefully aware, our attempt, which took forever to get to, but we finally did arrive at it, what we thought was a solution, was rejected by the state. So the $4,500 that Western Connecticut Clean Air can't come out of the TIP fund, as it's become known as around here, per order of the state. So I think going back to our previous discussion, the only possibilities are putting it in as a one-time grant or putting it into the Conservation Commission's budget. Those are the other two things that we were batting around at the last meeting.
And has either of them, so for instance, if it's the Western Connecticut Clean Air Action Committee, if they're coming in wanting a grant, they need to get the same grant application that everyone else has. If it's coming in under the Conservation Commission, that would be reflected in, under their budget.
Yeah, but as I recall, there was an issue with them accepting it as a grant because the money is, they're not an entity that can receive the money.
Oh, really?
It has to be paid directly to Kent School as, you know, partial reimbursement for their advance. So it seems to make the most sense that it go through the Conservation Commission as a budget item.
One time.
One time.
Okay.
And it seems like a very important set of data we're going to be getting from them. And hopefully it turns out that after monitoring for a couple of years, no issue, no more expenses.
Do you want to make that a motion, that we request that the Conservation Commission, I'll make it, that we request that the Conservation Commission include an additional $4,500 in their budget as a one-time expense to the Western Connecticut Clean Air Action for air monitoring.
Second.
actually necessary, it's just a budgetary request that
Oh, we got.
we're gonna listen
let them
to.
know. We gotta let
Well, you can
know.
let them know, but again, I think we're all in favor of it, but it doesn't mean to say that it's going to happen, because what if $4,500 needs to be used somewhere else? It's a budgetary request,
True.
like all departments are gonna come in,
All
we're
right.
gonna base it on the
Okay,
merits
fair enough,
of
so
what it
Bruce
is.
just
Just call them and tell them, make sure, or we'll ask them if they present to us.
Well, I was gonna do it before they,
Mhm.
okay, so I withdraw my motion. Okay, moving on, the award scholarship, at the last meeting, we discussed at some length, a request from the Kent Center School Scholarship Fund to take over the remaining funds that have been award scholarship fund under the control of the town for many years, roughly $1,900 and change remaining, $1939.15 remaining in the fund. And we left it, you felt that that would be okay if we got a letter from Kent Center School stating that they're okay with that. I have that letter here. It simply reads, Kent Center School agrees that the remaining funds from the award scholarship be given to the Kent Center School Scholarship Fund. Thank you for your efforts in making this decision. That's from the principal of Kent Center School. And also, if you remember at the last meeting, the town's auditor did weigh in and say no issues with this. Matter of fact, she recommended it because she gave 3 reasons, and one of them, the third one, was the cost of administering the fund is more than it's really worth. So from an auditor's standpoint, it was okay as well. So to move along, I would make a motion to turn over the remaining funds in the account entitled Award Scholarship to the Kent Center School Scholarship Fund. And they've already made it clear that it will remain a scholarship, an award scholarship. Okay, discussion.
The name will remain the same.
They continue to give award scholarship, yes, that's what they've stated.
They didn't state it in that letter?
That was from the school. The scholarship fund has said that they would continue as a award scholarship. The school is just absolving themselves.
Understood, yeah.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, so I'll instruct the treasurer to go ahead and process that. Streetscape. As we all know, meeting January 17th was held. It was, I thought, a good hearing. Lots of give and take, a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of questions that were answered. As I told you earlier, an additional $400,000 added into the funding without taxes. So the task before us now is to decide how to move forward. And what I see personally as the possibilities would be, 1, to do nothing and just let the whole thing die. 2 would be to go to another hearing, another informational hearing. Or 3 would be to bring it to a townwide referendum to vote on it, using the expertise of bond counsel for a properly worded question. I personally thought, and yeah, I'm a little bit prejudiced, but I personally thought that the read of the room in a couple of different ways was positive. My understanding is that there's been a survey out there somewhere which shows a positive feeling about it as well going forward.
Who conducted the survey?
I have no idea.
So for the Kent Chamber of Commerce, on their Facebook page, I just put out a poll right after the meeting. It was open for a week. We had 94 votes, and I want to say 69% was favorable.
What was the,
She's employed by the chamber.
what was the question?
It was, I provided a link to the presentation that was given at the meeting, and then I just said, should Kent redo its sidewalks, yes, no. It was that simple. And it was a 69% favorable outcome of 94 votes.
Wow, well, I think that was a terrible question, because everyone would like some sidewalk repairs. And I think for $500,000, we could fix the sidewalks. Now with $900,000, we could do a lot more, so that question was grossly misleading. I think we should have another hearing followed by the referendum, but an opportunity to get some discussion. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. One single meeting for both?
Yes.
So, let me make sure that you understand what you just asked.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Referendum's not be a machine.
No.
You can't do
A referendum, you're talking about a referendum a week later or something like that.
Can't be after the meeting.
It could be, but that wouldn't be a referendum. That would be a vote of the people gathered in the room.
No, a referendum has gotta be more than a week later.
And a referendum is done by voting machine and you register.
There's something to consider about timing of the referendum, which then is incorporating the ability to use absentee ballots. If you wish to schedule a referendum for more than 3 weeks out from the time of the public hearing, individuals can get absentee ballots via mail. If it is less than 3 weeks, people must be present in person to receive absentee ballots. It's just a side note in how you want to handle this, because again, it is something to consider as far as the voter.
Okay, so, good point. So are you recommending or are you just
I
providing?
am providing you the information.
Okay, so 3 weeks out allows people to get absentee ballots by mail.
More than 3 weeks.
3 or more
yes,
weeks
that's
out
correct.
allows that.
So, it's again, just a difference in process, but you don't wanna, the potential of even scheduling a public hearing to a referendum, you don't wanna limit it to a 1 week, 2 week, you wanna go at least the 3 week suggested time frame to again allow the absentee ballot voter, if that's something you'd like to consider.
Good information. So if you think a public hearing, which I have no problem with.
I would like another public hearing.
Chris, thoughts?
Jeff, could we ask why you feel there should be a second public hearing?
I think all the information presented was loaded in favor of forging ahead with this project, regardless of other information. As I said at the meeting, I specifically asked the question, I asked the subcommittee to come back to tell me what they would do with $500,000, if that was all that was granted, and I never got that. I got at one point a discussion, well, we'll do like, a quarter of one side, a part of Main Street. What I was hoping for as an answer was, yes, we can repair all the sidewalks, all the places that were shown to have had some water collection that could be raised. I mean, for $500,000, it could be some substantial repairs to the town. And now that number's $900,000. I don't see that there was any consideration of anything really other than just redoing the whole project. The slight variations in materials were really somewhat inconsequential. And I think it was Mike Govel that talked quite a bit about some of the materials issues. And I don't think these were fairly evaluated. I think at that hearing, some information came out. I know there were a lot of people, yeah, let's just do it. But I think some questions came out that were legitimate and are now more on the table. And I question why it has to be a 30-year bond. I mean, everything else the town's done has been 10-year. I know 30-year makes it sound cheap, per year, but it's still a $4 million project. And I maintain the new governor has been in office for less than a month. We've already heard about sales tax increases, expanding the scope of sales tax, tolls. I mean, I think as citizens, we're going to be hit with a lot more taxes. And I think we just need to sit back and decide if we really need to do this whole project. That's why I think another hearing will have an opportunity for people who really didn't pay attention until the first hearing to come out and express their views. That's my thoughts.
Well, I transcribed I took notes on everybody who spoke.
Wow.
And then I just put the overall takeaway that I got a sense of, and again, everything is heard through individuals' ears. Most people agree that we need to address the sidewalks. That's the tenor that I had, that most people felt that we had to address the sidewalks. Safety being the #1 concern. However, in that, there were various attitudes and voices on the scope of the investment and the project. I heard some people who just wanted them all done and agreed with the subcommittee. They like the continuity, they love the fact that it was all done at once, they like the idea of the enhancement on the aesthetic level, I clearly heard that. Some wanted other things to go even further, some wanted Elizabeth Street and Lane Street to be looked at and considered in the program, which I think we do have an obligation to look at if indeed that's going to be part of the program. And then there were also people, and they weren't just a small group, that really wanted areas needing the most attention and being cost conservative. Aesthetics not being the big issue, which is a component that has been a stronger issue for, I think, the subcommittee at this point. Many expressed concerns about the material and the material used, the cost analysis of investment versus life use, which I don't think was answered, and the cost analysis of investment versus aesthetics, which I also don't think were answered. I felt many people that noted concern with the cost impact. They wanted more precise figures, and they desired additional options, which is, I think, dovetailing to what Jeff had asked earlier, is what are the options? I get that the subcommittee had said to us, and we heard it, that we don't want to give 5 different options. But I think what happened was it wasn't explained well enough as to how we got to those options, or at least the program that we put forward. Then lower on the list, I heard drainage and fixing existing issues, implementation and effect on towns and businesses. I think Geraldine brought that up specifically. What happens when you run into a Great Barrington where one side of the road shut down and the businesses aren't? So I think that has to be really understood from a how long is your business going to be impacted perspective. There was also issues about handicap, more parking, handicap access and more parking for that. And then others were concerned about the safety again with if we don't do something, it exposes us as the town to significant potential liability for inaction. So to that, my takeaway is that we definitely need another hearing. I think part of the problem, and I'm going to be frank here, is that this sounds like a sales pitch. And I don't know if it's meant as a sales pitch. I don't really think that that's the idea, certainly coming from our board. And what wasn't well explained is how we got to this final point. All the points may be valid and right, but we just didn't explain it, I don't think, well enough as to, you know, questions that specific people brought up about material. Somebody asked specifically about lighting and came up with a $240,000 figure for that. No one showed, you know, there was no presentation of what that was going to look like, what a lamppost would look like, what kind of light shedding we would get. And I think those are comments that people really are grappling with as to what the visual is going to be. So to that order, I would agree with Jeff. One, we need another hearing, meeting to explain those concerns. And then based on that, I think we should do something. I don't think we should scrap this and say, go away, subcommittee. But I also don't like the idea of saying, we just scrap it and go away and not come up with a viable solution if indeed people are not willing to spend a certain amount of money. I don't think it's fair to the people out there who want something done to the sidewalks. Even if it is something as, if you will, the budget with what we have of $900 or $1 million right now. Which, actually, I have a question. Of any of those 2 grants that we have received, are we handcuffed, saddled, or anything such that we can't use those unless we use other funds, our own funds? Meaning, can we just go out and, to Jeff's point, take $1 million and do both sidewalks?
Well, what I'm trying, I haven't broached that topic with the more recent one, but with the one we've had now for a while, which is in danger of expiring. I did put a call into them the day after the meeting, to this being a part of a larger grant.
Mhm.
And I've not gotten what I think is a clear answer to that. I'm still awaiting a call.
Well, it would be
back.
good to have that clear answer.
Because that could make this discussion right now somewhat of a moot point if we're obligated that, no, you said you were going to do $2 million of sidewalk work, and we're glad to help you with $500,000, but we're not giving you the 500 if you're not gonna do the rest of it. That's the question that
Well, that is the question. I'd like to see that in writing, one, so we can present it to the public, because that's important information.
yeah.
I mean, it's important information, and I would like to see it with a $400,000 grant as well. Because right now, maybe the discussion on the table is less than 500,000, we actually have $1 million, or we have $1 million and we put it in another auction, and the town's gonna put up $1 million. So now you have a $1 million exposure as opposed to a 2.5. But those are the pieces that I think have to be explained. I just feel it.
The committee met last Saturday, a special meeting, and they have a list of, similar to what you just read.
I read it, yeah.
Of unanswered questions that's what I think the subject of an additional hearing number 2 would be. Address those questions. Those are the questions that our note taker, the committee's note taker, came up with.
And maybe just so I understand clearly, there is a deadline for this $500,000, correct?
December 2019.
Does the project have to be shovel ready, or does the actual shovel in the ground, or does the money actually have to be spent by that date?
I believe money has to be in the ground, but that's the same person, that's the answer that I'm trying to get to question number 2.
Because,
the 2 questions.
You know, if we start the project.
And can we get an extension to that date?
Well, that may be.
We can, but can we in this case?
Yeah, but if you just go with the concept that we don't want to risk that, I think the question is to find out the exact timing. Can on December 1st we say, okay, we all approve it and we're all good, and then we get funded? Or do we actually have to have shovels in the ground well before that?
Well, we don't get any of that. It's a reimbursable grant, so you do the work, you get paid. You do the work, you submit a report, you get paid.
Well, that's very interesting to find out
That's the way
what that date means and how it impacts the actual program.
And the guy who administered the grant has left the.
Right. And the only reason I say that, one, it would be good to know. Two, I don't want this as a veiled threat that we're losing $500,000, and therefore we have to run around and do it.
Not intended to be so.
Well,
I have one other question.
Just.
One of the groups that potentially would benefit most from improved sidewalks, obviously, is the Community of Elders in Kent. And one of the reasons that at least one of those groups has asked for a presentation is that they aren't always comfortable coming out at night, driving at night, etc. Would it be possible to hold the second town hearing on a Saturday during the day?
we can hold it, I think, anytime, right?
Good idea.
I mean, I think the more the merrier, and encourage people to watch it as well. That's, I think, important.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to see coming out of the committee, and I know I've read their minutes and I saw that they addressed many of the things that were from my takeaway from this, but I would really like to see a concerted effort to say, you know what, there are problems with our sidewalks right now, and if we were to just run out today and fix them where they're really liabilities, this is what it's going to cost. If you're really going to be a sidewalk subcommittee, I don't know if the charge is to go out and find the best and the be-all. It might be just, we want them fixed as best we can right now, and then maybe later, maybe not. But if it's truly, it has been stated by this board, it has been stated publicly everywhere, that the sidewalks need improvement. If that is accurate, and someone falls, and we haven't taken care of it, that's a liability.
Especially after we're all on record.
We're all here. So my perspective, directive to the Department of, the Rick's group, is if there is something that is a significant liability, we fix it now. However, we have to fix it and still continue on with the sidewalk program.
purposes of decision right now, are we in agreement that there should be a second hearing?
Yes.
Are we in agreement with Catherine's suggestion of doing it on a Saturday during the daytime? We've also got weekenders.
That would work.
Sure.
Yeah. Are we in agreement with, per Darlene's information, if we would go, well, I guess we would then have to need to decide whether a referendum would follow.
Mhm.
Okay, so we can ask that question. Okay.
Why not schedule a referendum?
And why can't we
and they
plan
tell
on
you
the
to vote it?
referendum anyway?
We should schedule it, you know, Darlene's suggestion, not
In
suggestion.
accordance with Darlene's
Yeah, through
scheduling.
that, we'll first have to schedule the hearing, and then schedule the.
You won't
You gotta know what you're gonna take for the referendum.
you
Yeah,
won't have
yeah,
the
you gotta know
time.
how to write up.
Ballots and everything, all that's gotta be
You
done.
don't have a crystal
That can be done
I believe,
per bond council.
and that's why you would hold then a town meeting that just adjourns to a referendum. Because at that time, you'll have the proper wording for that motion
Right.
based on whatever the information is and how you feel the project is gonna be presented to the residents for vote.
So you're talking a town meeting as
You
opposed
have
to a
to.
town hearing?
Yeah,
No, you have to have a town meeting that adjourns to a referendum, you can't just go to a referendum.
you could hold this, I wanna verify, but you could hold this, whatever this Saturday function is, you could hold that as a
Right.
town meeting and adjourn it to a referendum. I just don't know that that's where you're at, because you don't have the solidified proposal and wording or suggested project that you're gonna present to the referendum as a question. So it sounds like you're still no matter what, it sounds like you're still two steps. You have to hold a public hearing to provide that information to the public, get feedback, get a more solidified solution to what's gonna be presented, hold a town meeting, adjourn it to a referendum would be.
And so said town meeting doesn't matter then, because nobody's gonna come, because they know nothing's gonna happen, correct?
That's correct, because the motion will be put forward as such to include, to adjourn to a referendum.
As long as
Right.
one citizen.
As long as enough individuals are present to open it, close it, and vote on it.
Right, okay.
Can I ask the question, what is the, aside from the $500,000 deadline, what is the reason to make such a hasty move?
Well,
Or hasty is the wrong word.
I would
Maybe
say
hasty's the wrong
partially
word.
because we.
Why are we doing a meeting and then, why aren't we giving it enough time for them to come back and make sure? We could come out of this referendum with the exact same questions. And if we do, that's gonna be a problem for me.
We've been talking about this for the.
So, no, I just wanna know, is there something aside from the deadline of the $500,000 that the subcommittee can tell me there's urgency behind it?
You mean other than the fact that we've been working on this for 8 years or whatever?
At some point, it's gotta come to an end. And the end is gonna be the town vote on whatever we recommend after the second meeting.
And I think.
Wait a minute, say that again. You think that, so if the town, if you recommend, if the subcommittee comes with a plan and there are still questions, you think that we should just put that forward as a referendum?
You think there will be questions after the second meeting?
You don't?
The second meeting is to answer the questions that they have.
We hope, but my point is that there might be,
Well, there may be some questions that some few people have that are unanswered, but I think the majority of the population will have come to a conclusion whether to go forward or not.
And there's always gonna be some questions. I mean, we're not gonna have a hearing where we're gonna be discussing the styles of lamp posts and how many lumens should be in the light bulbs and, you know, I think that's not the kind of thing that I think should be decided in it.
so just to play that out, if the majority of people say, why are we putting lampposts up? We're gonna adjourn to a referendum with lampposts in there?
If the sentiment of the meeting is that lamp posts are stupid, that the LED lights that we have presently give enough light, then hopefully we would all see that and we would move the lamp post from said proposal before going to it. And I don't think that's gonna happen, but
Isn't your grant based on a plan already, and can you vary from that?
The grant is
the
not.
grant's based on an application, yes.
But in that application, did it or did it not have a certain design plan that you have to
No.
you can vary from that?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I thought that's how it was accepted, with trees and lamps and.
That's what
There were samples given of such.
We never adopted that plan. In fact, we all had problems with that
The
plan.
town
Our
had
whole
plan.
community had problems with that plan.
But
So
if it-
we
was
go
it a
back
was it a
with what's-
requirement of the acceptance of the grant?
No.
Are you gonna put lamp posts in? I thought that you were just going to be running the conduit underneath so that when, if you decided at a later date to put the lamp posts in.
The proposal that we had and that we priced and that we presented, did everything. It had
So, and it
those in it,
showed
but it was
that-
as a line item, so they were priced at about $10,000 a piece. And I think maybe there were 24, I forget what
That's
exactly
what I
the
think I
number
was.
was. And so, you know, we put that all in. If, you know, we had to make changes to this, and this is where, Jeff, you and I get sideways with each other, because this 30-page, which I've sent to you once, and I know Joyce has sent to you once, and I thought I gave you one in my office, which you said I've never given you, but I have on 3 or so occasions caused it to be either given to you or sent to you by email. So, let me just finish.
I do it.
Okay, good. I'm so happy. We've made progress. So, with this document is almost an infinite number of combinations of different building materials and different sections. So, when you say, we want to know what $600,000 is going to do, or if we say what's $900,000 going to do, you can go through here and mix and match and pick, like a Chinese menu, one from column A and one from column B, and you can add it up and come up with something that, you know, basically satisfies your need of inquiry. I don't really think, and that's,
I don't think that's a real answer, because everybody who heard what you just said, who had access to that document, would come up with their own view, and I'll take this, that, and that, so.
yeah, that's exactly right.
And what I had asked for was, this is your recommendation on how to go forward with the project as you've defined it. What would be your recommendation if we only had, say, $1 million, which now we're talking about a bigger number? So that's not clear. I mean, you had the 2 basic proposals and a variant, but there was no proposal to really shave it down as a bare bones. I know you could go through and mix and match.
We gave three recommendations. We gave 3 recommendations, all at differing prices. You happen not to like those recommendations.
Did you give a recommendation for what the subcommittee would recommend if all you had to spend was $500,000?
No, we did not.
Okay, that was really my concern.
Point of order, I believe your subcommittee is on record as saying that you wouldn't even do it, because you could only do one side of the road, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Which, excuse me, by the way, is not an answer. Because there's a sense, and this is what I was getting at, there is a sense that it's this or nothing. And I don't think anyone in this room or anyone in that meeting wants nothing. I think what Jeff is going after, and I'll be the first to admit that I was like, concrete, granite. When I heard the professional stand up and say, granite, I was like, okay, if that's what, if your research and other people say that makes sense, that makes sense. But again, to get back to Jeff's point is, you have $1 million now, you do the Chinese menu and pick and choose, and you can say to the public, if we have to use the money we have now, here's the Chinese menu we have, we don't like it, it is not our preferred route, but for another $1 million or $1.5 million or $2 million or whatever the number is, if you support us, we can get this done.
Chris, we are a subcommittee of the selectmen. You need to make that decision. Our recommendation was to do it in granite and do it in cement. We think that is the best for the town.
For $3.8 million.
Excuse me. Yes.
Okay.
We think that's the best for the town. That's our recommendation. You, as selectmen, can say, no, we don't want that.
Do you want us to put it to a vote?
We don't believe we should do that. The selectmen think it should be this, and this. And you present that to the town. But you asked us as a committee to come up with a recommendation for what's gonna solve the best needs for the town, and we've come up with that. And you say, no, it's too expensive.
The public-
Fine, you change it, we've given you the alternatives.
The public has actually weighed in, David. That's what you're not recognizing, is the public has weighed in with questions. If you answer those questions,
We're gonna try to answer those questions in another meeting, but our recommendation to you is to do the whole damn thing, and we'll try to answer the questions. You can say, we don't like it, committee, get lost.
I think you
Oh,
understand the
can we say,
tenor.
committee, can you please come back with different recommendations?
It's
That's
there.
what
You can.
It's not a recommendation. This is
Well,
not, believe
The
me.
committee doesn't believe that's the right thing to do.
And I will say it right there, that's the problem. Unless you come back with alternatives or ideas to answer people's questions, then you're getting us in a pickle. And I don't think that's a place we wanna be.
We're coming back with answers, Christopher.
Isn't that the purpose of the next meeting?
Couldn't they hear it?
And I think we're trying to make conclusions of what will happen after the next meeting.
I agree.
Another public hearing, public meeting, we will answer the questions that were raised, and then I think it's time for a decision after that, whether you have enough information or not. But it will come down to the Board of Selectmen making a decision whether to take it to a vote or not at some point.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten pretty close to the time where we need to do that. Here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is, I think, you two selectmen, because I know Bruce has been involved in this from the very beginning, I think you guys are very suspicious and unhappy with the conclusion that we've come to. And we think that you guys, who are only really 2 votes in the town, you're really only 2 votes, we think you're trying to stonewall this project. That's the way it seems to us. And I think we should have a referendum. I think we should get as much information out to the townspeople as we possibly can. Let them make the decision. Don't let the 10 people on the committee make the decision. Don't let the 2 selectmen make the decision who seem to be against this project in the way that it's been presented. And let's get on with it. Let's have a vote. We'll have a lot of people there who hopefully are well informed, who have been given options. We'll take heed to what you're saying here. But let's get on with it. Let's do it before we lose the grant. You don't trust us. We don't trust you. We've been at this for 10 years.
Yeah, so here's what I say, John. You don't trust us. You're going out to the informal club to present?
We were
You guys
invited.
hold on, you wanted to go to the Lions Club? You wanted to go all these places as public information? To me, I'm in sales, that's a sales pitch. And so when you say I don't trust you, it's not that I don't trust your group. What I say is I just don't trust that you're giving us the options that the public deserve. The options they deserve. It doesn't mean to say, Jeff has asked the barest bones, which is almost absurd in terms of, and I think he wants to point that out, it's like, okay,
Really?
for $500,000, well, the response from your committee is we'll do one side. That's not a response. What that is saying, we're gonna take our marbles and pull up our game if you guys don't like it. And I think that that's frustrating, personally.
Okay, so let's have the next hearing and we'll provide the information that you, Chris, have extracted and distilled, which is very similar to what Catherine has done.
Mhm.
And we'll come back and we'll readdress those issues where there were gaps. And I really strongly recommend that we have a professional there who can answer some of these questions that, frankly, we aren't prepared to ask because they're engineering questions.
True.
Which way are the lights gonna point? How is the light gonna be shed on the street? How many lumens? We don't know. I mean, everybody knows that we don't wanna have light pollution here. That we wanna have more task lighting so it's safer to walk. And not have the light going straight up. We don't want that either. I mean, we're not irresponsible people. They're fairly, it's an august group on that committee. All people who've been longtime residents of Kent and who care about the town and want to do things the right way. And this isn't their first project that they volunteered for.
I just would like to say, I don't think you can characterize people just because they're on the committee, that other people who ask questions, who may not have lived here long enough, who may not have cared for the town, or whatever adjective you want to add to it, matter. We're voters, we're taxpayers. And
And-
as you have heard, in one of these, there's concern from people who might not be able to afford it, from people who are concerned what's gonna happen in the state and overall, and I think we should just be responsive to that.
I
And I
agree.
think that that's really part of what is, it's not distrust, it's what we're fighting for.
Then let's
It's what
do
Jeff
it.
and I are fighting for.
Let's do it. We're agreeable with that.
Okay.
Chris, I don't think that going and talking to people, informal club or anything else, is a sales pitch. Today, Mike Monserrat called my office for something else related to what we work with him. And I asked him why he wasn't at the last meeting.
Mhm.
And he said, "What meeting? What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, there's proposals and information going out about repairing the sidewalks, and I know that would benefit you." He said, "I knew nothing of it." So there isn't all that much information out there.
So, I completely appreciate that. The question is it our job to go out and would you as a sidewalk committee or representatives go over to Mike's office and talk to him about it? Is that
No,
appropriate?
But
I don't see that as
you told us we
appropriate.
couldn't do that kind of thing.
Well, I don't see it as appropriate, because if Michael wants to become part of the process, he shows up at a meeting.
But
And when
doesn't-
he gets that information at the
doesn't
meeting,
know about the meetings.
well, I can't help Mike on that.
If
I
we
can't help Mike on
can't
that.
go to the informal club and different things like that,
So have we done that with the firehouse?
I don't know.
That's not our committee's responsibility.
I'm talking about precedents. Have we done that with any other committee? If it, and I said
They
this.
may have, I don't remember whether
They
they
did.
did. I joined the firehouse building committee after it was already formed and the.
When we did when we did the
construction.
school edition, I don't believe we went out, the subcommittee didn't go out to the Lions Club and talk about it.
Chris, we got invited, I can only say that of what I know about, I don't know about the Lions Club. I was invited by the informal club. I've gone there 2 or 3 times and have spoken to them. And they said, "John, would you give us an update? Would you come in and give us an update?" And I said, "Sure." And then all of a sudden it becomes this huge bomb going off in the middle of town hall or something because, you know, you guys think that we're out electioneering. Well, we're not. We're providing information.
Then they should.
We have a point of view.
They should, I understand
We have
that.
a point of view.
But
I think we're entitled to a
let's be
point of view.
clear, your point of view is supposed to be the Board of Selectmen's point of view.
Oh, I don't think so.
Well, then let's take a vote now. Because if
I
we
don't
don't,
think you guys have that power. I think if somebody goes out and does a comprehensive body of research as we've done, I think we're entitled to talk about it. I don't think that there needs to be a gag, nor should there be a gag order on this, or you guys say, "We'll pick up the ball, we'll kill the project, and we'll go away." I don't think that's right either.
what are subcommittees' charges? And what is the role, what is the policy for a subcommittee?
I don't know, we never got an explanation of that.
Historically, as I understand it,
Yeah.
and I'm no expert, historically, a subcommittee is formed by the Board of Selectmen. They study something, they come back with a recommendation to the board, it's acted on or not, and then if it's done, it's done, they disband it. Now, I may be wrong, I don't know what the,
One of the things that you've asked for is a second meeting so we can answer questions that came up in the first meeting. If we go to an informal club to try to answer questions, what's the problem? We want the public to know as much as they can about the project and come and vote.
so my question is, why didn't you go to Mike Monserrat's office if indeed he wasn't at a meeting?
I would.
And that's
And
the
so would
problem, and I don't think it's right. I
We
think
have
if
a
you're gonna
difference
give
in-
people,
we
if you're
have a
going to give
difference
people
in point of view.
information, if
If
you're
you're a
going to give people
politician and you're
information.
running for office, you will speak in front of any group or any person or any 2 people about what your platform is, what you're voting for. Why do you want this candidate as opposed to that candidate?
This is not politics, David. This is not politics, this is a subcommittee report. I think that's what's not clear. What was handed to us?
The charge of the committee.
Oh, this is the charge. Committee shall be charged with compiling a plan for the rehab of the Kent Village Center. The motion was seconded. Doesn't say anything, I just don't know what.
Okay, that's what we've done.
We've compiled a
I
plan.
think we're getting caught in the weeds here.
Yeah, I think we need to, we'll be here forever, we need to, set a date for a public hearing
Yeah.
and set a date 3 weeks after that for a referendum.
Maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks even.
But if the board decides no on the referendum, okay, fine, but we can set those dates now, hope for the best and move forward. We're gonna be here all night.
Just set the date for the public hearing,
Yeah.
and just at that point, I think that that's the most, it would be in my opinion, suggestion, that that's the most important thing
It
that
is.
should come out of this evening, is setting the date for the public hearing, and then going from there based on whatever may come out of that hearing. So
Okay,
that you can appropriately warn it, date it, and properly get the question.
Okay, so I agree, Darlene, thank you. Are we in agreement to set
Yes.
public hearing on Saturday?
How much notice for the meeting?
2 weeks to get it, 10 days for the paper.
Okay,
I
so,
think perhaps the committee needs some time to get answers to some of these questions.
oh, no, I'm not gonna do it
How
this
does that
Saturday,
fit in?
obviously, but,
John, what's your thinking?
3 weeks, 4 weeks?
so we got this coming Saturday is the 9th, then the 16th, then the 23rd. Is the 23rd?
You know what, we need to consult with the engineer to find out his
If he's
availability,
available.
because I think he's gonna be critical to
Yeah, I agree.
clarifying some of these points that we didn't adequately answer before.
Can we would you agree, John, to tentatively set it for the 23rd, and then you'll find out tomorrow if he's available?
23rd of February?
23rd of February at, what's wrong?
There,
At what time?
the library is giving a talk at 2 o'clock then,
On
so
what?
here,
Oh, we
history of LGBTQ people. It's at 2 o'clock here in the town hall on the 23rd. I'm writing about the Lakeville Journal. So that time, I don't know if that would work.
Not that time, no, they've reserved the room. Could be done in the morning, could be,
No, push it to next week.
We have basketball.
I think there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be busy during the day, so that the daytime meeting may be awkward, even though at nighttime, we're gonna miss some of the elders.
Well, what if we do it
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah.
No,
and it's
It's
late.
an
Yeah.
inconvenient time for everybody, perfect.
Equal opportunity. The 2nd of March?
I think we should get it done before we're into March. Then we can have another meeting and we're into April and
Let's pick a date here and get this done.
March 2nd.
what's happening March 2nd? We have conflicts?
My calendar shows me being available, David.
Would you like a time, please? Time on March 2nd?
My calendar shows me being away that day.
Oh.
Maybe, I'm not sure when I'm returning from being away that day. If I can check, I'm happy to do it on that day if I'm back in time, depending upon.
What was wrong with the 23rd?
There's an event here.
There's
at
an
the town
event here at
hall.
2 o'clock in the room downstairs.
And we couldn't do it in the morning? And what was the
No.
problem with the morning?
We could, I have a commitment to Leslie. Gotta referee 2 basketball games.
Does Bruce need to be
Maybe 3.
here?
Yeah, he needs
Yes.
to be. He's the peacekeeper.
So maybe it is that you can't do it on a Saturday even though you'd like to.
Well, there's Saturday and Sunday.
How about
There's
Sundays?
2 days on the weekend.
Thank you, Don. How about Sunday?
Have there ever been
You'll miss a
town
lot of
meetings
people
on
who
Sunday?
aren't
It's not
here on
a
Sunday because
town
of
meeting, it's
conflict.
a public
Let's say have it in the
meeting.
morning.
Just,
But
I mean,
No,
again,
Sunday
there's,
at noon.
Yeah.
Sunday noon, how's about that?
Football's over,
Church is over.
baseball hasn't started yet, spring hasn't started yet.
I think it's,
What date?
It's 2.
24th?
Is
I'm willing to
24th of
withdraw
March.
my suggestion
Yeah,
of a weekend if it's not gonna work.
Yeah, I agree, I think we're trying to get, I mean, while I think it's well intended.
All right, how about the 22nd? George Washington's birthday.
Friday,
Friday the 22nd.
are people away on that weekend?
It's the
People were always away.
It's not a holiday. It's
Monday, the 21st.
Monday the 18th.
The 18th is President's Day, that's the true
It
holiday.
is a state holiday,
Are you
state
okay?
employees don't work, I don't know if that makes a difference.
Never go
On
anywhere.
what day?
On George Washington's birthday, the 22nd,
And they get President's Day off, too.
correct. Right, does it matter that it's a state holiday, Dominique, or?
No, because it's not the federal, it's not.
Okay, it's not, okay.
What time?
Do it early, it's like 6 o'clock instead of 7
On Friday night?
on Friday night.
Getting home from work?
I'll do any time, I just wanna get this.
Could we schedule this tomorrow, once we find out the availability of the engineer?
Okay, we can do that, but let's
No, we
pick.
have to have a meeting, we need a motion. But I can put you on the agenda for the 7th.
No, let's
To do it, to set the
pick a
meeting.
date, and then you find out if Mike's available on that date.
And then I'll say, okay, if you're not available that date, then what date are you available on?
That'd be good.
And then we'll come back, we'll have a special meeting, and
Yeah.
we'll spend an hour sorting out the,
Yeah, we-
It back to when the engineer.
Yes.
you guys just tell me when to get in here, and I'll do the best I can.
Yeah,
So
I
do
say
we
7
decide on the
o'clock.
22nd?
7 o'clock on the 22nd,
All right, yes.
tell them we'll buy them dinner, John.
I can't find a dinner.
I think yes.
Okay, town hearing on, February 22nd at 7 o'clock.
6 o'clock. 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock. Motion, that's a motion, second, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, management review, we've sort of discussed that to some degree.
Management review, I think, the only thing I would like to say is, and it dovetails on meeting with these people, I'm sorry, these departments, my apologies. I think we do need to at least tell them right now what our feeling and sentiment is. Are we going to, and this again, department wide, not specific departments that we may have talked to already, but department wide, are we looking to do, based on the management review, to implement anything merit-wise in terms of a merit program for everybody completely, not again as rationale for salary increases? Or are we going to do something else in terms of, or are we gonna go back to, if you will, the percentage increase?
I didn't really understand your question.
Okay, I know, it was convoluted. My apologies, let me try again.
Well, I sort of did, so let me.
So, the management review concept was to do a number of things, one of which was to hopefully try to establish a program in which we could possibly, definitely implement some sort of merit process across the board. We're going into budget season tomorrow, or this week, and we have no means in which to do that for 2019. Would that be right? Would you agree with that? That said, and we may do it or we may not do it. We haven't committed to that, I think, clearly, as been stated before. I think we just need to tell people that we do not have the time or the process to do it for 2019 budget.
Well, I would agree with that. I, however, am interested in considering some of the salary adjustment, considering, I'm not committing to anything right now, just like I firmly agree with you, we didn't commit to merit pay earlier in any of those sessions. But I'd like to at least consider some of the salary adjustments that were put forth in the management review. They have merit.
Agreed.
They have merit.
Having merit, correct.
I'm never going to be, I'm not a stubborn person, but I'm never going to be an advocate of merit pay in the Kent Town Hall. I don't think it will work. best, I hope it works for them, and I'll be the first one to say I was wrong if it does, but I don't think it will. But I do think that Mr. Palmer set forth some of the things that we were seeking in that management review. Say, evaluate it however you want. Jeff, I know you gave it a C minus. Some people out here probably wouldn't even give it that. I do think it's worth consideration of some of the things.
Agreed. You've certainly established yourself as a stubborn person. But I agree with that we, however you said it, I don't want to try to restate it and end up having
Did you understand me better than him?
Yes, I understood you. I understood his second restatement. And I would also like to say that I think we should try our best to find a means forward to implement a merit-based system. You don't think it'll work? I think it should be able to. I've been looking at some, online at some review protocols. The one that Lee gave us just seemed way over the top. And I don't think we should try to use that. It would consume more time than it's worth. But there are some simpler ways to just give general reviews. I think we should start looking at that kind of process. Whether we try to start the process now, probably not, because we're in the thick of things. But this next step of discussions, we should keep in mind that that's what I consider to be a possible goal. Probably have to fight you from a principle standpoint along the way, but it's a fight we can have.
Right.
Are you gonna make a motion on that?
What I just said?
On everything that you said?
Well, I will make.
Because I would just like it to be a motion. I
make.
feel comfortable, more comfortable with that.
I'll make a motion that this year, as part of our budget deliberations, we should consider the points made in the management review as related to salaries in certain departments, number one. Number two, I do not think we should consider for now, in my mind forever, but I'll say for now, merit-based pay. And number three, I think we should continue to discuss, as we have for a number of years now, across the board increases based on something, of course, whether it be cost of living or union negotiations or what have you. So is that clear enough? Seriously, is that clear enough a statement to?
Clear enough? It's clear enough for me. It's at least a motion.
It's not a commitment to anything, but it's.
But if you're making a motion, that's the commitment.
It's a commitment to consider. It's not a commitment to do. I'll withdraw the motion before I'll say we're going to
I'm not
increase
asking you
Donna's
to do
pay by
that. What I'm
$10,000.
asking for is a motion so that we all in this room and everybody that's listening understands where we're going so that everybody is on the same page.
I think this is, you made a motion, I second it. If you want to have further discussion, let's have it. If not, let's vote on it.
Will this be an executive session? That's a sticking point with me. Because I don't think what you just outlined is executive session material.
No, I don't think it probably is either.
Okay.
But I think in some cases it might be.
I think in some cases it may be.
Some may be specifics, but
Well,
certainly
based
across the board increases are not executive session.
No, and based on what the town attorney has already said about the study itself was to be discussed in public. That was a town attorney ruling.
True, that is correct. That is correct.
If that's your basis for making a salary adjustment, that's public session. I mean, that's town attorney, unless I missed.
No, you're correct. He did say that they urged me to do it in executive session, and town attorney said no.
So I think this needs to be done.
Though I think there may be segments of that do qualify. But that's not part of my motion. My motion is simply saying that we're going to consider, discuss, whatever word you want to put in there, the recommendations of the management review. Number one. Number two.
Could you read back what you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There was a lot of words there. How do you distill the motion, Joyce? Oh, sorry.
Question?
We were specifically told that the management review was not utilized, not for when the assistant salaries were being adjusted. And it was not the role of the Board of Selectmen to say that they were going to be utilizing it for future decisions. So, I don't know if I'm bringing this point to make it a clear statement of how can we continue to now use it, not use it, use it.
What do you mean use it, Caroline? We're not looking at it and saying, here's what he says to do here, okay, we do that. We used it for guidance as we looked at dealing with the clerk assistant issue. Did we or did we not?
Yes, we did.
They told me
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
I mean, he pointed out that there was a discrepancy.
I think if nothing else comes of this management review, that's one thing that did result from it. Not specific recommendations, but it put it all out there on the table, the assistance part.
And we considered what he put in place. We didn't adopt it anything specifically from the report. It was used as general guidance for how we dealt with that situation.
You disagree with that?
I do.
What do you disagree with?
I disagree that I feel that the dollar amounts that were put forward in the management review in the scales were, I was outright told that those scales were not going to be utilized in the discussion for the assistant salaries when that discussion came forward. I was outright told by this board.
I believe, if I recall correctly, that we looked at those, but we also looked at the compensation that those specific assistants were getting in other departments. And that's where we were balancing it out, if I recall correctly. Is that accurate? Do you recall that?
That's about the way I saw it.
I mean, we were trying to...
We are not adopting his low, mid, and high range specifically. It's something we're going to look at, and we may end up deciding that's the way to go. But there's nothing in that report that was ever intended to be just implemented based on the acceptance of the report. It was for guidance. And your motion is basically that we use that for guidance going forward. And that's what the intention all along. We may or may not use some of his recommendations, but you're going to consider them. I mean, I don't see the problem with that.
But in order to be fair and consistent, you're gonna start meeting with people, and you're gonna start discussing their salaries and things. So when we come in, and so that we can present the information properly, we need to know, are you considering or going to adopt the low, mid, and high? So when we come in, we can say, I'm an average employee, so this is where I'm going to put my salary, or I'm an awesome employee, and this is where I'm going to put my salary. Or are we just going and saying, I've done such a stellar job that I'm just randomly picking a number out of the air because they're not using any documentation as a rule of thumb. We need to know what you guys are using as guidelines, point blank, so that we know how to prepare to come in, Chris. I'm not going to come in and say, I'm high and I use this range, when 3 people later come in and say, well, I didn't use that survey, I just picked a number out of the sky and they agreed to it. You have said what you want to do is be fair and consistent. So we need to know what that base is so that we all can prepare in the same way so that we're all being put into that same formula. Does that make sense?
I hear you. I personally
properly?
don't know if there is a formula to that degree, other than we have COG information and we have this guy's management information.
So which information are you as a board going to use when I come before you on Thursday? So that it's going to be consistent when...
Does it have to be consistent?
Yes.
I mean, he made... Just
why wouldn't it have to be?
I don't know.
You want to be fair? You want to be unfair and inconsistent with
No, it's not unfair. It's if a department job is X in COG, right? And I don't know.
I thought...
If you would, if it's okay if I use you since you're speaking.
Go ahead.
You know, he specifically made some very specific observations about you and your position
I
in
agree.
that management review.
I agree.
That's what I wanna consider.
Okay, but what if I come
I'm
back
like-
and say something different? Are you only gonna use the management review and that's your baseline? Or are you gonna use the COG salary survey? Are we not gonna use, are we gonna use, so you're gonna use his verbiage, but you're not gonna use his scale?
He used the COG salary survey to arrive at his numbers.
I understand that.
So they're
So
one
you're,
based on the other.
so you're saying in my case, you're gonna use the review because I was specifically mentioned in it, but Leslie wasn't, sorry to throw you under the bus. So what is she gonna get as a base? What is her,
Should she change?
well, I don't know if you're gonna be fair or you're gonna be unfair,
Yeah.
you didn't know a minute ago.
But she,
If our
if
objective
she's
is-
asking for a change, then we need to consider that.
And
If she's not asking for a change,
Okay,
sorry to
so-
throw you on the bus.
I,
But department by department, if you ask for a change, I think we're gonna have to look at some data beyond, I think what we're saying is beyond that.
let-
And if you guys have to have us pinned down to a specific thing, maybe we need to get that.
So you want us to come in with pretty much the criteria under which you are going to evaluate us?
That's merit,
No, that's.
great,
that's merit.
great,
And you can't have merit for one unless you've got a consistent merit basis for everyone.
great.
That's my point. I'm not against you getting an increase, but based on what, you know? I mean, it's consistent.
Well, several assistants got it, and that's based on the management review, and I get that. So you've set a precedent that you are using the management review, and you said yourself, not only the verbiage, but also this, you didn't look at the schedule, right?
Well, excuse me, but before the management review, wasn't it brought up to this board that there was a discrepancy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm
So
not disputing
hold on a
that.
sec, before the management review board, no department came in saying, I'm sorry, that is wrong. There were Donna, I'm sorry to throw you, and there was another, maybe Leah, were the
Yeah.
two that came for salary requests.
Last year.
And Rick, I'm sorry.
Right.
So, based on that,
And Barbara.
and Barbara? I
Yeah,
don't remember
you-
that.
she got hers.
She got hers.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so there was an issue beforehand that we
Correct.
addressed out of that. So to use that same, to extrapolate that same thing as saying, well, because we had issues here and you used it specifically for the assistants, that we have to use it for everything else, I think is not, it doesn't line up for me. If you need, and I'm new to this, if you need a schedule of how we do it, then I think that's what we have to get in fairness, if that's how it has to be.
What do you mean a schedule?
A COG salary
A
average?
salary survey, not a schedule.
Well, I think the observation he made in the management review was that most of the positions within the town hall are, I don't know what his exact wording was, but.
We're mid-range, but we were at the
Okay,
mid-range.
you know, at or above average, which is what I found when I did the survey a couple of years ago. Okay, with some exceptions, and he specified the exceptions, and that's what my motion says, that I'd like to take a closer look at those exceptions, not at the total ignoring of everybody else. That doesn't mean, we'll use Leslie because Chris already did, not just because Leslie didn't ask for something, but we're using the salary survey in this particular instance where Joyce and Donna and Rick, Leah were specifically mentioned. And, you know, for example, let's just say one scenario might be those 3 or 4 people get what he's recommending or somewhere at it or maybe above it or whatever, and everybody else gets the across-the-board increase. And the people who are getting those raises don't get the across-the-board increase. Does that make any sense?
No, because those salary surveys are based on information from 2 years ago.
No,
You're giving that increase of 3%.
I'm just making up a scenario. I'm not basing
you.
it on anybody's salaries, anybody's survey. I'm just making a possible scenario for consideration. And my hope would be that the people who get the 2.5% or 3% or 3.5% increase are pleased with that, but are also pleased that their colleagues got something that they perhaps should have been getting or should have gotten a while ago, and are
so that it would behoove everyone who is gonna be coming and sitting in front of you to discuss their budget, to actually ask for more money.
No, that's not, see, that's what I think is wrong, that's what I think shouldn't. But you're saying they should ask for more money, because if they don't ask, they're not gonna get it.
Pretty much.
Just been
What-
the tradition that we've had forever.
Pretty much,
What would,
that's right.
what was instead at this point? I mean, I
You know
just,
what, I don't think I think you better go back to your 3% across the board and put it up, cause
I vote yes.
this is not gonna be resolved in the next 3 weeks, guys.
But we're not talking, well,
Honestly.
in fairness to what Debbie said, that is what I was getting at, that we are going to go with some sort of percentage increase. We are not going to go with anything that was recommended in terms of either by ourselves or from a management review or outside for a merit system. That said, if indeed a department comes and asks for more money on a salary, they better be prepared to understand and ask and have backup as to why they deserve that salary. And it should fall in line with whatever survey, whether it's a COG survey.
but I don't wanna open that door that Donna just opened and say,
Why not?
you better come in and ask for something, because if
See,
you don't, you're gonna get.
That's a problem.
Why not, Jeff? What do you think? I mean,
I don't agree with it.
if somebody comes in asking for
I
more
think
money
that's
because
wrong.
they deserve it, they believe they deserve it and can back it up, don't you think we should consider it?
That's what we've done every year.
But then that's gonna be merit pay. That's gonna be, you know.
Well, no, wait, it's merit,
Leslie's
it's
commission
merit.
says, oh Jesus, they're gonna give these other 3 or 4 people raises because they asked for, we better ask for one too.
But only
So
Well, that logic leads you to the
Leslie,
conclusion
4%
that
and Joyce
the salaries as
5%.
of today can never vary,
Right,
except
that's
by the
exactly.
percentage every year. I mean, that's an illogical
I
conclusion.
agree.
Say-
Would you
If
agree
we're
with
not-
that?
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
If there are gonna be no relative adjustments to anyone's salary, then what your salary is today, everybody, as uneven as it might be, it's fixed in time plus 2-3%, whatever the across the board is.
That's
I don't think that's an acceptable
I agree.
outcome.
The only reason I don't think that's an acceptable outcome is because there's no way of truly justifying said increase to the taxpayer.
What do you mean? If, for instance.
And I think they all deserve it.
Well, no, if there's a salary survey that shows, as it did, I believe, one of the things, as it did point out in the assistant lines, if there is somebody, one department that is grossly underpaid, that should be fair, that should be adjusted. And if they come to us, like they did last year, and we asked them, well, actually, they were very kind to say, we will wait until you do your process, but please consider us. It's not, in my opinion, right not to at least hear that. And view it within some salary survey,
Well, I
again.
understand what you're saying, but we have right here before us 2 people who have asked for some fairly substantial increases with some good justification.
And if it
I've
falls,
made a motion to consider those, rather than just, you know, waste of the paper they're printed on, because they're not. I'm not making a motion to grant them or grant any part of them, but it sounds to me more and more to me like we're just.
Okay,
Taking
let's
ourselves into a
move
deeper,
forward.
deeper hole.
I think the motion, as I want to get it reread, captured the spirit that we're going to consider them. We may take some action related to the recommendations, we may not. But how can we not just say we'll consider them?
yeah.
And then, let's get on to this. No matter how we try to summarize it today, it's not gonna be, there's gonna be some disagreement. Can you restate the motion as you understand it?
I will, but I'll also double check it before I actually formally write it. But Bruce made a motion, as of this budget year, he will, 1, consider the points made in the management review.
Excuse me, not he, we.
Well, it's your motion.
It's your motion, so you're
It's
saying,
your
it.
motion.
You said, made in the management review as related to salaries. 2, could not consider for now merit-based pay. Continue to discuss across-the-board increases. Number 3. That's what you said, in a nutshell, but I'll double check that.
I second that if it wasn't seconded.
It was already seconded.
Oh, all right. Track, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chris?
Opposed.
Opposed. Can I ask why?
No.
Okay.
Don't we have to
I thought you had to.
Okay, I think that it's clear that, that's what we're doing, we're using the management review. And we're also looking at individual budget lines. And we are considering those who ask for raises and have the support that they will bring as their argument. And I also think that I would like to see a specific, as I hear from here, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'd like to see a specific survey schedule that we are going to use so that so that when somebody comes with a rationale as to why they want something, I want to be able to look and say, okay, well, that's within the range.
You said, you mean a salary survey?
I don't know what the proper phrase is. It is a salary survey? Okay, a salary survey.
So
No, I don't know the scope. I was not very clear as to the scope of what he used, he being the management review individual, and or what you have traditionally used, which is, but traditionally you have relied on the COG, and I would like to see whether we're going to rely on COG of every town or just the COG of the 3 towns around us.
How about this? I have on my desk, I can go get it right now if you want, the Goshen study, and they list the specific towns that
I have that, you gave that to us.
Yeah, that lists the towns that were used in that evaluation. Perhaps I could get a copy of that salary, but not, when we have the whole thing, we don't have the salary evaluation itself.
I just think it's appropriate to bring it when we're talking the discussion on that. So that, for that reason, I don't think we actually have to make a motion for it, but I believe in the spirit of it, and I don't think we just, that's my
Okay, so your opposition was unnecessary motion.
Could you share that list with the rest of us, so we could,
It's just a list of towns, but sure, absolutely.
So we could-
There's no numbers, it's just a list of towns.
yeah,
Happy. I'd have to get the numbers. They show the towns that they use for their survey.
Right, but there should be a list right now, or a salary survey of the 3 towns that we feel comparable, which I think is the most appropriate. When I go out to do a house, I do not take Watertown into consideration. I only take 3 towns locally, and I think that that's, to me.
That's what I'm saying, this document that I'm talking about that Jeff got was 10 towns that are in the COG, no Torrington, no Winstead, just about everybody else.
I think that, one, it would be great to disseminate it, 2, it would be great to have it during budget season.
Freshly done one.
Correct. Updated numbers.
2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
Thank you.
Goals, we're going to discuss goals this.
I don't think you have the nerve to do that.
No, I'll hold that for a while.
Okay, some approval of some minutes. I would move to approve B, C, and D, because those are all management review, some in executive session, some partial executive session, and some not, but those are all management review meetings. So I move to approve those 3, B, C, and D. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then A are the minutes from our regular January meeting. I would move to approve those as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. My report is fairly uneventful. It is here if anybody would like a copy of it. I gave you guys a copy already, but there's a copy for you. You should have it, so it's not in your packet. The extras, if anybody wants it. Some of what's on there we discussed today. Do you have anything you want to report?
I do not.
Okay, there is in your packet a report from the treasurer, which was added late, but it's here. Debbie, are there tax refunds?
One from Stephen Lowy for $141.20.
That's it?
That's it.
I move to approve the one tax refund presented by the tax collector.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. And then employees reporting on seminar workshops. I went to one put on by the Connecticut Council of Small Towns. COST is its acronym. It was quite good. The star, in my opinion, of it was a gentleman by the name of Keith Vanoof, who's a journalist for the Connecticut Mirror 6 state legislators there, 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and actually it's 4 of them, 2 of each. And finally, they didn't spend all the time sniping at one another. They actually talked like civilized human beings back and forth to each other, regardless of their political affiliation, and answered the questions that were presented by the moderator, who was an attorney for the Hartford County. So it was actually pretty good. And I have to say, they portrayed the state in a little bit better light than it has been in recent years, but I don't know time to tell. And this was both parties, this was not just one party. Cost it. Joyce, you want this?